I am absolutely stoked for you guys to be joining us here. What we're doing here is a podcast called Shape the System, and it is really what we're trying to do is to meet people who we think are changing, one part of the world, a system and how it operates. And today we're joined by Trades for Good. I wanted, if you guys could maybe introduce yourselves, and then we'll talk a little bit about what Trades for Good does and sort of go from there.
Sure. I'm Tom Roberts. I am 1/3 of Trades for Good, joining from New York, or a couple hours north of New York City.
And I'm Thurman, the second third of Trades for Good, and joining from Melbourne.
Yeah, my name is Marten Magnusson, and I'm joining from Stockholm, Sweden. And it's 6 a.m. in the morning in cold Sweden right now at the moment.
I love that. And tell us a bit, tell us about Trades for Good. Like, what is it that you guys are doing? And tell us in the context of the system that you're changing or trying to reimagine.
Kind of coming from our name, it's Trades for Good. The idea behind our brand, or kind of our mission, is to help people make small daily changes in their lives that will hopefully have a greater impact on, whether it be their community, their neighborhood, their state, their country, the world. And the first kind of system, or the first space that we've identified that we would like to help shift a bit is kind of, I guess, hand soap, cleaning your hands, body care.
Yep. It happens on a daily basis. So let's unpack that a little bit. Talk me through the context of how Trades for Good is doing this with this particular product.
Yeah, well, I think, we started with a hand soap, but actually, in the context of systems, right, we started with bathroom plastic, and we started with plastic. And I mean, we haven't really thought about this business in necessarily specifically in terms of systems before, but it's an interesting lens to look at it. And if you look at it like that and think about the system that we're trying to break down, it's, I think, this convenience culture of plastic. And we've all got hooked on it. Right. And something happened, the world existed without plastic 100 years and everything was mostly fine. Although, there's a lot of minutia to this, and plastic has a lot of really positive purposes. But along the way, those positive impacts got kind of diluted. So we got to the point where it became, somehow it seemed like a better idea to take oil out of the ground, refine it, turn it into a indestructible material, mold it into a small spoon so that you can stir your coffee and throw it once, and then you throw that away, and then it's been trucked there, and then you stir your coffee, and then you throw it away, and then it gets trucked away and then dumped somewhere. And somehow someone was like, well, that's easier than cleaning a spoon. That's the system that we created. And it's insane. And, so I think this system is this convenience culture of plastic. And we kind of created a monster and got hooked on that convenience. And, I think when we looked at it, and what's happened as a result is the rates of recycling for plastic are just really low.
And you talk about this in the product, right? There's in the actual, the hand soap, there's a very specific number, it's 20% or something. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, within the US, bathroom plastics have one of the lowest rates of recycling. It's less than 20%, but, and that's less than 20% of people who actually put it into the right recycling stream. But what happens to it after that, there's a whole bunch of other losses. And when you look at the plastics as a whole in the US, it's less than 5% that are recycled. That, that's another systems question, where the whole system of plastic recycling, and certainly in the US and, in many other countries, is pretty broken. Australia is probably pretty similar. I think, Australia, probably much like US, have been exporting much of this plastic waste. But anyway, within the context of that, we got hooked on this convenience culture. And I think part of the idea behind Trades for Good was to say, look, many people have been trying for years to break that system by kind of guilting people into making a lot more effort with their products. And I commend them for it. But it's just really difficult to break that drug of convenience. So that, taking your bottle and bringing it to the store and refilling it and then taking it home and putting it back in your bathroom, those people that do it, I I commend them. Keep doing it. Don't change. Don't buy our product. Keep refilling your bottles. That's awesome. But the reality is that most people don't want to do that or don't have the time to do it. And we wanted to create something that had just as much convenience as plastic, but without the negative side effect.
And is this idea then of this trade for good is perhaps about small behaviours that might change, but also you're taking this trade for good to say maybe if we rethought the way, in this case, a soap dispenser works, then we can make a design-led kind of change that means someone can get all the convenience that they would have today, but as a result of choosing this version of a product versus the traditional version of a product, i.e. the one in plastic, they're having a better outcome as a result of that. And it's as much led by their desire to be part of a better way of doing things as well as your design thinking in a lot of respects to say if we rethought this and said instead of putting it in plastic, we put it in aluminium or aluminum for our American listeners. And, that 68% of aluminium, I think you were saying, is recycled already. So, this is a much more positive step. But that's basically how the product works, right?
Yeah, I would say there's three elements to it. I guess you have one element, which is from a product standpoint, there's a trade for good there in proving to companies and industries and categories that actually, the default is plastic, but there's other solutions out there and it's worth doing. And then from a customer standpoint, consumer, it's like, yeah, you can take a small step here and make a positive change. And that's just one of many small changes you can make in your day-to-day life. And I think there's a third element here, which is around like the psychology of all of this, which is, we don't want to guilt anyone into anything. We want to use desire, and that's where Marten came in, who designed the label and the can and the package to make something that's just beautiful. And
it's beautiful.
It's not like, I'm going to do the right thing and put this in my bathroom, but I guess.
And that actually leads me to a sort of follow-on question. You have there's obviously three of you guys here and on the call, and trying to get a sense of, you've obviously brought three of you together to solve the problems that you're encountering. And there's a problem of, I'm guessing, a supply chain problem, but then how do you make a product that is a better product, also desirable? And what's the third pillar here? Tell me how the three of you have come together and what various aspects of the problems to be solved are being solved by each of you.
I think that the great thing with this project is bringing three friends trying to make a change for good. It's just we have all different skill sets. My skill set is more maybe leaned towards design and sort of that aspect. So trying to invent something that was already in the market, right. You have to just do a design shift, sort of. It's more or less changing the mentality of things, which is really important. And it's just easy. It looks easy, but it's a lot of stuff that we had to do just to overcome it, which is crazy.
Yeah. Oh, design is never as easy. It's easy when it's done.
It looks easy. It looks
beautiful. That means so much to me.
It's people get it directly, but getting there was the problem.
So what was that major challenge from a design perspective?
The major design perspective, I thought maybe was that we had to create something that wasn't used before, and just getting simple cues. And I think making it look good, making to feel the soap vibe, have it in an aluminum can that is mostly used for beverage.
Right.
It feels like it's right here, but it feels like a hand soap. Do you understand?
Right.
So getting that.
Yeah.
That was.
I mean, every time you want to change behavior and you put people in a different context, this is difficult, right? So I think that's, as a design-led challenge, is definitely a change.
I think too, it's one of those funny things of, we wanted people to think of hand soap in a new way. Okay, so don't use plastic anymore. Use an aluminum can. And I think the perception of aluminum is sometimes a cheaper product. And so on top of trying to get people to swap out a normal behavior from plastic to aluminum, we're then also putting a very well-sourced premium product into a type of material that people usually assume is cheap. So then, as a design space, Marten had to create something that was absolutely gorgeous because it had to elevate this material from being just something around the house to this is actually a material that is very special and can play a very important role in helping kind of shift that waste. And so I think like from a design space, it was also tough for Marten to be able to take something that's considered so cheap and inexpensive and really make it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds to me like there might be even a problem with our perception that aluminium is cheap and inexpensive. I mean, aluminium, to my understanding, is like from an energy perspective, is one of the most intensive materials to make or to get out of the ground and then turn into aluminum or aluminium. And so I think people's mismatch of understanding of this is an amazing product that can be used for a variety of things. I mean, I think in reading about the product, it was one of the only materials that you found that could actually mean that the things were sealed properly and weren't going to have problems with leakage and the like. So it's obviously an amazing product, yet people are approaching it with this is cheap and disposable and throwaway. And so you're having to educate them almost on two levels in some respects.
Yeah, and that's a kind of the third challenge, I guess, with aluminium is, you don't necessarily associate it with
natural products, right?
Right. And, we've made a soap which is natural. It's almost entirely organic, fragrance with essential oils. And, normally you would expect that to be packaged in a glass bottle, or actually most commonly like a plastic bottle, right? It's clear. You can see the contents. But actually, from a usage standpoint, like clear is a problem because you get ultraviolet light, which breaks down natural products, so your shelf life is shorter. And then the second thing is like anything that isn't perfectly sealed, you have air inside it, and that creates the need for artificial preservatives to, again, increase your shelf life. So what you got two options here. You either have a short shelf life, which isn't a good environmental solution, or you have to put in a lot of artificial preservatives. Unless you package in a light-free and airtight environment, in which case you don't need artificial preservatives and you have a long shelf life, which means you don't have product wastage.
So just changing gears a bit, we're in three different parts of the world. Well, two of us are in one continent, so that's nice. How did you guys get here? Like, how are the three of you working on this problem in the area where you, like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, talk me through this.
It doesn't make sense because we were all three of us were working previously on a premium sort of locally based vodka company that I was handed to invent this product, and sort of Tom came along, and then Thurman came along, and this was like funded but like a massive corporation, for so to say, and that's sort of how we met. And then we changed path from working in the spirits industry in working into this sort of project. That if that sums it up.
I'm assuming you were all in the same building when you started this. Now, like for people who aren't watching, you're all in three different locations. I presume you're working on this all remotely as well.
Yeah.
Or do you actually normally live in the same city but just happen to be in different places?
And that is, it does create a challenge. But actually, it's kind of always been like that. Even when we were working together before, and not for ourselves, but for another company, we were all in different places. But there was also, there's something to be said in a sense for, like, there was a certain chemistry between the three of us where even within the context of working in a big company, I think the three of us connected around, there was a passion and an energy there that was like, and I think everyone's experienced this working in companies where you have a few colleagues that you work with through your life. You're like, you know what? This is the person, that I would really like to continue working with, or if I was going to do something, it's that guy. I certainly felt like this with Marten and Thurman. That when we worked, I was like, these guys are rad. It would be really cool to do something with them.
Yeah, that's always the start of a good working relationship. Was there some kind of unifying belief that where you sort of went, hey, I think that too. We all see this problem and we crack that over a beer at some point, or whatever the other cliched places where people come up with these kind of ideas. Like, how was it that you sort of landed on? I mean, obviously there's a higher order need around trades for good, and I know that soap is only the first kind of thing that can live inside that order. But you must have started by looking at a problem and going, this is a problem. Let's start by solving this problem, but let's elevate that. How did you get to that conversation?
I think it's been quite a journey. And originally this project in a way started probably like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah, like so Marten, Tom and I, like we were all working for the same company. And Marten and I we really wanted to do something outside of our normal job. And I mean, we came up with a cold brew company, a beer company. You name it, we came up with it over 3 years. And then I think there was just a space where we wanted to do something different. We wanted to do something kind of through happen chance, we kind of settled on soap.
Right.
And Marten and I we were going back and forth for probably a year on soap. And there was one piece of the formula that was missing. And it was really Tom. And I'll never forget, we were actually at a company Christmas party and they were celebrating the retirement of one of our colleagues.
Right.
And they were having, I kid you not, a fireworks display.
Sure.
And Marten and I were like, we need Tom to make this project happen. So we like gave him a nudge during the fireworks and we were like, hey, we're starting a hand soap company. We want it to be environmentally conscious. We want to try to change the system. You want to help us out? And then we had like our first official meeting the next day at like some strange cafe.
Post fireworks.
Yeah, post fireworks.
Yeah.
And I guess we started again, like it's been over 3 years. We originally started with, we wanted to do it in a marbled plastic bottle, which conveyed the message that we're collecting plastic from the ocean and it's kind of the swirl together. And we were told that's impossible. You can't do that.
Right.
And we were like, okay. So then we were like, what's the next best thing we could do? And from there, that wasn't possible. And then I can't really remember how it came about, but we kind of landed on this idea of an aluminum can. And the more research that we did, we just found that this is a better way to do it.
I think Tom just called us up and he's like, damn guys, plastic, like it's not good enough. We need to just scrap that. And we were working on this recycled plastic idea for like 1 year. It was like 2 days before Christmas. Tom was like, we're scrapping the plastic because it's not good enough. It's like recycled plastic. We're still putting plastic out there. And I was like, seriously, man, are we doing this right now? We just like 1.5 years. We're like, I just have to call the guy at the factory and we're making it like after Christmas. You know what? Now it's not good enough. I was like, I took 2 seconds and breathed that in and I was like, cool, that was a lot of design work. I'm just like, yeah, okay, let's change. We're doing aluminum now. Let's do it.
You know what? I think there's a bit of theme here, though, that we have been using certain materials to do certain jobs for ages. And a lot of what you see in some of these like really interesting companies, and they're not all necessarily out purpose driven, but they're rethinking a material and how that material might be used. And materials development has opened up, a whole breed of science and chemistry that are letting you understand you can totally rethink this material, and there's polymers and interesting stuff that are made of derivatives from plants rather than having to dig oil out, to your point earlier, Tom. So I think this idea of reimagining materials is definitely a theme. Just in terms of, like you've uncovered in some respects this idea that aluminium or aluminum packaging can be used for things other than Coca-Cola. Like what else? What else are you thinking you might put in this? Maybe without giving the whole game away, but maybe give the whole game away. What else would you put in it?
Well, I think kind of one of the funny things though about that, like what you were saying about different materials, is although you can use materials kind of cross category, the systems of actually filling those materials haven't caught up. Right. So for example, like you could have 2 parallel routes, right? One is a soap filler who fills things in plastic, and then you have people making aluminum cans, but those don't necessarily cross.
Sure.
So there are like these barriers sometimes to entry just because the people making the production or the manufacturing aren't able to use those materials. Right. So through this kind of system of us trying to like kind of putz our way through using aluminum, I think we have found there's several uses for it.
Right.
Pretty much depending on the corrosivity of a product. Certain things can't go in cans if they're too corrosive, right. But everything from any kind of soap that you're using, body wash, lotion, those are all things that can be put into a can. And we've kind of designed a very special top to our soap, right, which we're hoping to allow for more flexibility as we develop in the future.
Other things. Yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing product. Just sort of higher order as well. For you guys, like, you're in your corner of the world changing the system. You must sort of look out and think about other people who are doing other interesting or amazing things. Give me some examples. What are the things that you guys love that you're seeing other people doing, and why?
There's one like obvious example, and I see some parallels in thinking. It's a very unoriginal example, but I look to Tesla as an example of a company that same principles, design principles of using desire rather than guilt, right? Like all solutions for electric vehicles up until that point had looked like some of the like nerdiest vehicles like you could ever drive. You look like you're driving like a Lego car, right? And then along came Tesla, like, no, we're gonna make the sexiest car alive. It just happens to be electric.
The early ones were pretty nerdy, to be fair, but they certainly lifted their game.
Yeah, yeah. But it was a different philosophy, and I thought that was really smart. And I commend them, and I think their success has been driven on the fact that they've led with desirability. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we're all humans, and I feel like the human progress is driven by desire more than it's driven by guilt. We're striving for something.
Absolutely.
We're not fearful and running from something. That's less effective than being like, a strong desire. And, sadly, I think it's kind of what created the mess we're in with the climate and the environment, because it doesn't appeal to our sense of desire. That's a sense of fear, which is a less effective motivator than desire. You're like, well, climate's a bummer and it's annoying that we're going to destroy the planet, but that super yacht looks real nice. I kind of want that. That's reality.
Just pass me that plastic spoon you were talking about earlier. That's right.
Exactly. And so I think I have a great admiration for companies that are managing to steer in a more sustainable way using desire as a tool to do it.
Beautiful.
There's this really amazing company out of Melbourne called Fluff. Yeah. And it's basically a makeup brand targeted at young girls from the ages of 15 to 18, with the whole idea that changing the perception of beauty and the idea that less makeup is more, and really trying to create a community within a space where so much of the world is saying something so different. And it's really pushing consumerism and pushing waste. And you need to have 100 different this and 100 different that.
Right.
And with that comes a ton of different, waste. And what they're just trying to say is keep it simple, use good products, and kind of in a way, everyone has their own beauty.
Right.
I just think it's one of those things where within that industry of cosmetics, so much is saying one thing, and here's a small company that's deciding to say something completely different.
Right.
I think it's really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, to your point about the mix of skills as well, you've got to design something desirable. You've got to message it, package it in a certain way so people actually can access it. And obviously, it resonates with them. Then you've actually got to work out how to solve the fundamental problem of why that thing's different underneath. Just sort of one kind of closing question, and don't mind who takes it. So many people, and you guys are a great example of this, all working in a vodka company. I think I got that right, vodka company. Are typically on the fence, looking out, thinking, there's got to be a better way, but B, what role am I playing? What's your advice? Like, most people aren't out on the outside yet and are in a place where they're thinking, maybe I could be doing something differently, and maybe being part of something, or, actually going and starting something, whatever that is. Love to hear your thoughts on how someone goes about that, or where your heads were at when you made that decision yourselves.
I think you really have to have the mindset for it. It doesn't matter. It's like, I think everyone should go out and try to do it. Maybe not everyone is suited for it or is going to have the drive or the energy. But if you feel like you have the drive, the energy, and the opportunity to create and do something and make a change for good, if that is joining a demonstration for the climate change or anything for that, just like minor things, I think it's super important doing like that sort of climate change process. And going back to like the drive, I think it is either within you or not within you. And it's like, whatever you do, it's like, if people look at us and say like, that's a great idea, I can do something like that, and like envision doing something else that is good for the nature, that's perfect for us, because that's a win-win. So that is super. But how you come about it, I think it is within yourself. If you feel you have something that is super good, I think just go for it. What's the worst that can happen?
I think one of the most important elements is, having, I think you got to have a passion for something, right? And a passion for an idea and a concept, right? And I think, we were kicking around ideas for a long time before we landed on this bigger idea around tackling this issue of plastic waste. And then we kind of zeroed in on that. It's something I think we all felt a lot of passion for, and this idea of, making a series of changes for good and what that brand could symbolize and all that stuff. And I think, I see some people who like work in a company and they're like, you know what? They're like, oh, I want to be in control of my own time. I want to do this and this and this. And you think about a lifestyle they want to lead rather than a problem they want to solve. And I think that, solving a problem can lead to a lifestyle you want to lead. But looking for a lifestyle and then searching around for some kind of business to build your own business, that you've got to be really passionate about the problem you're solving, because otherwise it'll be pretty short-sighted. So that's one piece of it. And then the other piece of it, I would say, and I don't think a lot of people talk about this enough, is, it's really, it's glamorized, this idea of like, leave your company, start something on your own, be your own boss, all this stuff. But actually, I would say don't underestimate the power that you have as an insider within an organization, be it a large or small organization. And, it's a big organization. Even if your influence as an employee, as a stakeholder in that business, if you can take that giant tanker of an organization and move it by 2 degrees, a huge difference. Your business that you start, would have to become a pretty huge business to have just as big an impact as a 2-degree course change that you can make that you're in. So I would also say to people, don't underestimate, before you jump ship, maybe have a word with the captain and see if they can.
The power of staying. I love it. Thurman, do you want to add to that, mate?
Yeah, I was, kind of building off what Marten and Thomas said. I think the biggest thing is you just have to start it. You just have to one day say, yes, I'm going to do this. And I think even for us in this process, like I was saying, we've been working on this for 3 years, and there got to a point where we just kept pushing it back. We're like, the design isn't just right. The fragrance isn't just right. And we just kept kind of delaying us to get this started. And at a certain point, we just had to say, screw it. We'll make changes as we develop, but you just have to do it. And whether that be starting your own company, or whether that be, going to the office manager and saying, hey, I want to start a recycling program. But I think that it's something truly big, because, it's the hardest part is starting. Yeah. And once you start to notice so many different things that you can shift and change and make greater impact. But it's just, I think as humans, it's sometimes, it's just so hard to change your behavior, and you just have to do it.
Love it. All right, guys, that's amazing. I think we'll wrap for today, if that's all right.
Can I go back on one point quickly? Because I think we skipped over this maybe quicker than we should. And that was that transition when we went from this plastics bottle, recycled plastic solution, to aluminum cans. And I think it was just such an important shift in our business. And it came about, and I just think about it now in this context of systems. And essentially, when we looked at it, we had a recycled bottle, and we started looking into how do you take that recycled plastic bottle and avoid that thing going back to landfill, right? And then when we started looking at all of these refill solutions and pouches, and then okay, well, couldn't find a pouch that you could recycle. We couldn't find a pouch made from the right materials, and we couldn't find it in our heads to be like, well, how are we going to convince people to open up this little thing and have this pouch and then refill that, and then maybe it's not recyclable, but if they send it to this place, then they can turn it into something else, and just feel inconvenient. And I think that's when we started to feel like, hey, this system doesn't work. Something wrong here. And so we basically came to aluminum, not from a point of view of, we didn't start by being, hey, wouldn't it be rad to put soap in an aluminum can? We started from a point of view of, plastic's not working. what's a better solution here? And then what's a material that's better fit for the purpose of delivering soap? That's how we found it. You know, I just think when you look at the product, it seems like in some ways it seems like a simple solution, but it took a lot of thinking to get there. And the thinking came from a place of purpose for the product, not like, hey, this would be kind of a cool idea, you know?